Hey YouTube! Modest Mike here. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Clearing the Queue Review. Today, I'm reviewing a personal favorite of mine, Hellboy.
Some dads get their kids Legos.
Nah. Not that one.
Hellboy.
No, not that one either, no.
We had over 70 guests reported. We have no survivors.
Same story here, babe.
No, not that one, no. Oh, for fuck's sake, the comic, alright? I'm reviewing the fucking comics! Fuck! Sorry. Roll the thing. Hellboy, created by Mike Mignola, made his first appearance in August 1993 at the second annual San Diego Comic-Con. And the following year, Dark Horse Comics published the first run of Hellboy comics, entitled Seed of Destruction. That's that one right there. That's just that one. Over the next 2 decades, Mignola wrote and released over 60 issues of Hellboy, chronicling the outlandish hero's journey through a smattering of folklore from all over the world, culminating in the unforgettable final run entitled Hellboy in Hell. That's that one right there. Which began publication in December 2012 and ended June 2016. Although Hellboy was revived by members of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense in later publications of the spin-off series that shares its name with the organization. I do not acknowledge this bullhunkery! Hellboy in a nutshell is a story of a half-demon who's conjured into the realm of man near the end of World War II by the infamous Mad Monk himself, Grigory Rasputin. Because who the fuck else would it be? Along with his 3 cohorts, generic Nazi lady, creepy Nazi Igor, and obligatory gas mask Nazi, aided by the seemingly depthless resources of the fading dream of the Third Reich, Rasputin evokes the power of the dragon, Ogdru Jahad, to call into existence the key to Armageddon, the right hand of doom, the death of all mankind.
And upon his brow he set a crown of flame.
There's obviously a lot to unpack there, but instead of appearing where the Nazi Project Ragnarok had assembled, Hellboy appeared on an island off the coast of Scotland called Tarmagant. Thanks to the foresight of clairvoyant Lady Cynthia Eden Jones, American armed forces were able to amass on Tarmagant in order to intercept the creature as it arrived. Paranormal whiz kid, no, seriously, that's not my wording. That's how they refer to him in the fucking comics. Paranormal whiz kid Trevor Broomholm insists that the creature be spared and takes it upon himself to raise it as a normal child. This half-demon conjured from hell was raised by the very best of the greatest generation to have lived in the past century. And would you believe that he's a cigar-smoking, rum-swilling, take-no-shit-off, no-motherfucker badass? You'd be right to think so. According to prophecy, Hellboy's right hand is the literal key to Armageddon, and his arrival on Earth marks the beginning of the end of human existence. However, because of his upbringing, Hellboy repeatedly defies this destiny, insisting that the prophecy is wrong, and proves it by being an all-around good fucking dude. At its core, this is a story of nature versus nurture. Hellboy rails against his demonic heritage and refuses incredible power time and time again because he's uncorruptible. Because he's Captain America in a fucking trench coat. Things I like. This comic is an excellent representation of the philosophy, less is more. The art is detailed enough when need be, but never extravagant. Mignola's simplistic style uses color and shadow to convey mood and even help tell the story, One of my favorite examples of this is this panel, wherein Hellboy gives one of his own eyes to the Baba Yaga in order to stop the apocalypse. You know, like you do. Hellboy's day job as a member of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, in the beginning of the series anyway, is to investigate and confront the forces of evil as they make themselves known. A job he quits about a third of the way through the overall story. And I mean, who could blame him? Talk about a hostile fucking work environment. Anyway, aforementioned forces of evil often find their origins in folklore and myths from all around the world. From Kochi the Deathless of Slavic folklore, the African legend of Anansi the Spider, Hecate, the Greek goddess of witchcraft and magic. They even include a whole run about how Hellboy is the last male descendant of King Arthur's bastard Mordred, making him the legitimate heir to the throne of England. I mean, the whole thing, starting with the Wild Hunt, delves pretty deeply into Arthurian legend, and it's real fucking awesome, but unfortunately I don't have time to unpack all that in this episode, which is really just the nicest possible way I could say I'm lazy. While I will be the first to admit that they don't nail it every time, the fact that they include actual folklore, real mythology, they even throw in some fairy tale shit, and it just adds another level of dimension to the world in which Hellboy resides. It gives the character that much more pathos because he's exploring these stories that we're all familiar with. And sure, it's a different take on it sometimes. Hecate, in particular. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I always love that kind of stuff where they take existing folklore or fairy tales and just sort of builds on that. I dig the shit out of that. I get that that's a personal bias, but yeah, this is my show, so you don't like it, get the fuck out of here. Some things I just wasn't sure about. Hellboy is unfuckwithable, so the stakes rarely felt real. Even when he goes to hell, all the demon lords are freaking the fuck out because Anunun Rama is coming to fucking kill them all, which, he proceeds to do because he's unfuckwithable. He even kills Satan himself, who's doing this whole Cthulhu death sleep beneath Hell's capital city pandemonium. And maybe it's because I read the whole collection at once, and I knew that Hellboy in Hell was next on my reading list after the epic climax of Storm and Fury, but even Hellboy's death felt like a non-event. It's probably because I just assumed that he was going to murder his way through hell and then, I don't know, leave the gate unlocked on his way back to the world of the living. Death holds no meaning for a character like Hellboy, who seems to exist beyond the laws that govern the reality in which he resides. I'm glad Mignola didn't ever bring him back. Comic book writers do that shit all the time, where they kill off a beloved superhero only to have him, oh, he didn't die, he's just traveling through time, or oh, he didn't die, he can't be killed because he's Superman. I was expecting that to happen, and it never did happen, so, I'm glad that Mignola made that choice, but, it also just sort of felt like that was what was gonna happen. This leads me to my next talking point. And I hate to bring it up, but some of the one-offs and short stories tended to feel a little formulaic at times. Hellboy shows up somewhere, somebody tells him about something fucked up that's happening, and then Hellboy will punch it real hard and everything will work out. And this started to make sense when I read Mignola's afterword in the omnibus edition of Hellboy in Hell, wherein he says, "When I started this series, the plan was it would go on forever, a rambling parade of standalone stories." And I gotta give it to him because really that's kind of the perfect pitch for a comic book premise. You've got loads of folklore and mythology as source material to pull from, and a leading character who doesn't age. It's no surprise that the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense comics were still in publication several years after Hellboy itself ended. He goes on to say that the story took on a life of its own, and Mignola had to start thinking about where this crazy train was headed. Which, of course, brings me to the end of the story and my last talking point. This is where I usually talk about what I would have changed. But honestly, Mignola acknowledged the only thing I really would have changed about this whole comic, and that is the ending. In the afterword printed in the omnibus edition of Hellboy in Hell, the creator says, "When I got to the end of chapter 8, the whole thing just sort of stopped cold. That last page just looked and really felt like the end of the whole series." The page Mignola is referring to is an image of Hellboy resting beneath a tree somewhere in hell after killing Satan himself and bringing pandemonium to ruin and snuffing out hell's fire for good and all. Mignola goes on to say that he kept the end at the end of the chapter, though he'd removed it from others, which I take as the creator confiding in his audience that this is where things probably should have ended. However, his comments about chapter 10 are as follows. This is always how it was going to end. It might be a strange ending. I'm sure it doesn't work for everyone out there, but it's my ending. And with all the talk about things coming to an end these days, Game of Thrones, Avengers, Endgame, oh, excuse me, I had a couple decade-long fucking projects just stuck in my throat. This all got me thinking about the best way to approach the ending of such a long and elaborate story. I'm a staunch advocate of knowing the major plot points of a story before setting out to tell it. But I always like to give myself enough room to improvise as to how those dots connect, which I find usually allows my characters enough space to be themselves and still arrive at their intended resolution organically. Therefore, I believe that because Mignola never originally intended for the series to end, the resolution of Hellboy's journey became muddled. After he kills Satan, Mignola felt that organically, this is where the story should have ended, which I personally agree with. Nevertheless, he went on to write 2 more chapters of the story in order to tell the ending he had envisioned for the character, which I think was more of a responsibility to himself as a creator than it was to the publishers or the readers. This was his ending. Doesn't matter if you fucking understand it, which I didn't. Doesn't matter if you fucking like it, which also I didn't. He wrote that ending for himself, and I have enormous respect for him for doing that, because it challenges the audience to analyze what they're feeling, to think about what they wanted. And if they really hated it so much, maybe they should tell their own fucking story if they're so fucking smart. You know, I think I've said this before, I'm probably gonna say it a few more times. You know, all of this, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. This is my first comic book review, and I know it's a bit of a change in format, but I'm still figuring this out. The Clearing the Queue theme song and a lot of the original music in this episode was written and recorded by my good friend Chuck Miller, and you can find a link to his SoundCloud in the information below. I hope you enjoyed watching this one. I personally had a lot of fun making it. And please, stay tuned, because I've got more opinions about stuff, and I'm gonna share them with strangers. And if you think you can stop me, I think it's only fair that I warn you, I've been drinking with skeletons.